My overly kind husband, David, has been sending money to his parents for 20 years as a sign of filial piety. Even though our finances are tight, we've never heard a word of thanks.
Acting all high and mighty over $1,000.
Instead, we only heard their cold remarks. Moreover, we discovered the shocking truth that our payments were secretly going to David's sister, Jessica.
If you give us a new house, we'll give up the payments.
Ignoring David's kindness, they pushed this unreasonable demand, and I finally exploded in anger. Fine, we'll buy you a house. My name is Emily, and I'm 49 years old. I married my husband, David, 24 years ago when I was 25, and we've had our ups and downs, but we're still a happy couple. Now that our children are grown, David and I have decided to enjoy our time together, but there's a big problem we need to address. Both David and I are getting older, and we want to save for our retirement. However, sending money to David's parents is the biggest hurdle. For the past 20 years, we've been sending money every month to David's parents, Laura and George. And it's not a small amount, a $1,000 each month. This is quite a large sum. If we were a wealthy family, it would be different, but even with both of us working, we don't have a lot of extra money. It was especially tough during the years when our kids needed a lot of money. Back when things were really tough, we once asked if we could reduce or pause the payments.
Are you going to abandon your parents?
The kid education costs are really piling up.
But Laura and George were furious and refused to understand my plea.
You could only get married and have kids because of us. How ungrateful.
It's not entirely wrong, but do they have to hold it over our heads like that?
They said things like that to us many times.
Emily, I'm sorry. From now on, I'll handle my parents' finances myself.
David said that to me, but marriage is about supporting each other. After that, I took over managing our household finances and continued the payments myself. David was strongly against it, but since I earned a bit more, I decided to shoulder the burden. That's how we've managed to get by financially until now. By the way, Laura and George have never once expressed any gratitude, only throwing insults our way.
Your income is for us, your parents.
Be grateful for raising you and send us money.
The only reason you managed to get married is because of us.
Laura and George constantly said terrible things to David.
Are they really his parents?
Often, I got angrier than David.
There's no helping it. They've always been like that.
But David would just give a resigned, bitter smile. Seeing him so resigned made my heart ache. Still, since David never talked back to his own parents, I, as his wife, couldn't complain either. It was a frustrating 20 years. If only David's sister, Jessica, supported the payments too, it would be easier if we split it. But unlike David, I've never seen Jessica get any snide remarks from their parents. In fact, they absolutely adored her.
She's so beautiful and such a good girl, just like I was when I was young.
Jessica is a blessing just for being born.
The stark contrast in how they treated David often made me angry too. But since David always calms me down, I've never really lashed out in anger. It's part of what I love about him, but I also think he could afford to get a bit angry sometimes. I feel like David takes his role as the eldest son way too seriously. Being the eldest or being a son, those things don't matter much nowadays.
I don't expect you to take care of us in the future.
I've actually heard David say that to our son before. Maybe he said that because he struggled with his own parents and doesn't want our son to go through the same. Even if David understands them, I can't. Once, I hoped they would at least thank David once, so I mentioned it to Laura when we were alone.
Could you occasionally thank David for the money he sends?
Laura looked completely baffled.
It's normal for a son to send money to his parents. Why should I thank him for it?
She didn't understand my request at all. Her reaction made me feel as if I were the one who was being unreasonable, and I was left speechless. I was truly stunned. But they always express gratitude for even the smallest things Jessica does.
Jessica, you are so kind to visit us despite being so busy. What a thoughtful daughter.
By the way, Jessica only goes to visit them about once a year, and it's usually just a quick day trip. In contrast, we visit at least once a month and often get called over for various reasons. Usually, it's just to run errands, yet we've never been thanked even once. I was fed up with their blatant favoritism. However, judging by David's demeanor, it seems he's been treated like this his whole life. Supporting his stories, there are pictures of him as a child in the photo albums, always looking sad. The clothes he wore were often hand-me-downs or ill-fitting, and many were worn out. On the other hand, Jessica is always dressed in cute, nice clothes. There are no pictures of David's birthdays, but Jessica's birthday photos, which are quite extravagant, are in David's album.
You have to go to a public high school. We won't pay for college either.
David was told this by his parents, so he used scholarships to get through college. In contrast, Jessica was told, "You can go to any high school you like," and she went to a private school. She even had her college paid for, but she partied too much, didn't graduate, and eventually dropped out. However, Laura and George didn't scold her at all, and just dismissed it as inevitable.
It's foolish to go to college and repay scholarships.
Laura and George only lectured David, which was terribly unfair. Moreover, they made David send them money, but demanded nothing from Jessica. Actually, Jessica didn't have the financial means to send money. She would take up jobs only to quit soon after, and even her part-time jobs didn't last. Eventually, she became unemployed and lived a carefree life, but Laura and George still adored her.
Give Jessica some spending money every month.
When I went to introduce myself before our marriage, Laura said that, and I was stunned. After Jessica got married and left home, Laura and George then demanded money from David, leaving me speechless. Despite all this, David didn't abandon his parents, which made me feel he was more admirable than pitiful. Even so, I couldn't recommend cutting ties with his parents because I am not blood related. It's a delicate and complicated issue, and I've been struggling with it for a long time. We continued sending money even during the tough times of raising our kids. We really deserve some appreciation by now. However, no matter what I said, Laura and George never expressed gratitude. They firmly believed that being supported by their children was their right. One day, I got a call from Laura. Usually, Laura and George are completely indifferent to our family. They don't care about our kids. All they care about is the money we send. Our kids never warmed up to them and naturally became distant. Whenever they call, it's usually to ask for something or request extra money. Hearing my phone ring, I had a bad feeling but reluctantly answered. Hello.
Hey, what's going on with this month's money?
No greetings, just straight to the money as usual, and I sighed, exasperated with Laura. Feeling frustrated that she couldn't see the anger in my eyes, I replied, "The money is always sent on the 30th. That's tomorrow."
I don't care about that. I need an extra $500 this month.
What? You mean $1,500? That's a bit much. When I hesitated, Laura immediately got angry.
What do you think your parents are for?
This was typical. She seemed to think that if she intimidated me, I would comply. But after 24 years of marriage, I had grown used to her and George's attitude. What do you think parents are for? Parents are parents.
Then you should send more money.
We are sending money.
I'm telling you to increase it.
No, I'm saying we can't.
Increase it.
No way.
You're impossible.
Laura must have sensed my sarcastic smile because she hung up on me. I thought I handled that well, but I guess it didn't come across. Talking over the phone is tricky. That evening, I told David about the call.
You're the only one who can talk to Mom like that. Your natural charm really came through.
David gave a wry smile. I'm not natural. I'm just saying what he can't. If we increase it once, they'll keep asking. We need to save for our retirement, so you must say no too, okay?
Yeah, I get it.
David nodded, but I still felt uneasy. And that unease proved to be right.
Dad said, we need to increase the monthly payment to $1,500 starting next month.
I knew it. I couldn't help but blurt out in response to David's news. You didn't agree, did you?
I told him it's impossible.
And what did George say?
He said, your kids are independent now, so you must have extra money. What do you think parents are for?
David gave a wry smile, but I responded seriously. You absolutely have to say no.
Yeah.
But a few days later, on a weekend morning, Laura and George showed up at our place and caused a scene.
Increase the amount of the financial support.
They seem to think that I'm the reason why the increase hasn't happened. While I was talking with Laura, David and George were having a serious conversation.
Why do you need so much money? You still have your retirement fund and savings, right?
With prices going up, it's never enough.
We need to think about our own retirement too.
Your own retirement. You should worry about your parents' retirement first.
George, like Laura, seemed to think that yelling at us would get his point across. David had faced this unreasonable behavior since he was a child. To my surprise, David stood firm against George's demands.
No, we can't do it. If you really need money, ask Jessica.
I can't ask her. In the first place, I wanted to give her money because she's struggling. Oops.
George realized he had slipped up. Wait a minute, what do you mean by that? I couldn't ignore George's words and looked at them. David was also frozen in shock.
What do you mean by that? Have you been giving our money to Jessica?
David directly confronted him.
So what? It's my money. I can do what I want with it.
It's our money. No, it's Emily's money.
Once I get it, it's mine. I can use it however I like.
Then why don't I just send it to Jessica directly? Why are you taking credit for it? Jessica probably doesn't even know it's from us, does she?
Of course not. I want to impress her. It's what any father would do.
This is ridiculous. I can't stand this anymore.
We had been sending money, thinking it was for his parents. Even though it came from my salary, it was essentially family money. We gave up vacations and other luxuries to send that money, but this was just too much. Finally, tears started falling from David's eyes. These were tears of frustration rather than sadness. As his wife, I understood his feelings well. David had endured years of being treated unfairly compared to Jessica. Even though he continued to send money out of duty to his parents, finding out it was actually for Jessica would make even the mild-mannered David angry. David was too shocked to speak, silently crying. I gently placed my hand on his back and glared at them. You two are too much. We've been sending money for 20 years, and all you do is treat us terribly, while favoring Jessica behind our backs. This is just too unfair to David. You haven't even thanked us once, and now you want more money? This is outrageous. I felt there was no need to hold back anymore and spoke out for David. Instead of being worried, they snickered.
Acting high and mighty over a mere $1,000.
They probably believed that kind-hearted David would never abandon them. That might be true. But besides his parents, David also has me, his devoted spouse. Laura laughed as she looked at me, glaring at her.
George is right. Acting all high and mighty over $1,000. Say that again after you gift us a new house.
What?
If you do that, we won't need any more payments. But that's impossible for you, so the increase is non-negotiable.
Fine, we'll do it.
What?
Laura and George were dumbfounded. Fine, we'll buy you a house.
Are you serious?
They stared at me in shock. David also looked at me, surprised. Then I smiled. A few months later, the house was ready, and we invited them to their new home. Here it is, your new home, your forever home, I announced with a big smile. It was a very large single-story house. Though it was a single-story house, it was more than spacious enough for a couple.
What is this?
As Laura spoke in astonishment, I spread my arms proudly. Look at this vast property, a garage that can fit multiple cars. You can turn it into a farm, focus on gardening, or even raise goats and other animals.
Well, hold on.
And just look at the size of this house. Isn't the brickwork on these walls amazing?
Wait, hold on.
The best part is this mountainside and the nearby river. No electricity or gas, making it the perfect rustic home. Enjoy your country life to the fullest.
Wait a minute.
Laura interrupted my enthusiastic speech, her face red with anger. What's wrong, Laura? No need to get so worked up.
You're the one who's worked up. Where even are we?
This is a lovely, secluded house in the mountains. Laura looked bewildered, then suddenly shouted in anger.
Why did you find such an inconvenient place? And what's with this old house? We expected a new one, but this is clearly used.
What are you talking about? This is a newly rebuilt house, using materials from an old one.
So you dismantled an old house and rebuilt it with the same materials?
Exactly. It's perfectly livable now.
At least get the gas and electricity connected.
Why?
You said why.
As I tilted my head in confusion, Laura looked at me with a defeated expression. What is it? You asked for a house, so we built one. Why are you dissatisfied?
I'm nothing but dissatisfied.
Really, such demanding people. I looked at David in exasperation, and he had a very complicated smile on his face. But remember, once we give you the house, the payments stop, as agreed.
What?
Yes, that's right. George, isn't that what we agreed on?
A new house. I thought it would be a brand new house with all the amenities.
This is clearly a newly built house. Stop nitpicking. I glared at George, and he fell silent.
Wait a minute. We can't live here. Take us back to our own house.
George looked stunned while Laura was shouting. It's fine. I laughed.
How is it fine? This is not fine at all.
The previous owner left various pieces of furniture as a thank you for reusing this extremely remote house in the mountains. So you can move in right away. By the way, the vegetables in the garden are just about ready for harvest.
What?
So, you can live a self-sufficient lifestyle here.
What?
Laura, living here will make you even healthier.
Are you serious?
I'm always serious. Laura looked extremely displeased. It's about a 30-minute walk to the nearest bus stop. Well then. With that, David and I got into the car and drove away. Oh, I'm so glad they're so happy they could cry. It was worth splurging on this house, with the super cheap land and the previous owner covering the rebuilding costs. Laura and George must be thrilled. Anyway, I fulfilled Laura and George's wish by buying them a house. Well, it's not perfect, but it's livable, so let's call it a success. Now we can stop the payments and start saving for ourselves. A few days later, George called. When I answered, he started yelling right away.
What is the meaning of this?
What do you mean? It seemed they couldn't get used to living in the mountains and ended up returning to their former house.
I tried to sell that house to make some money, but it won't sell at all.
Well, given the location, it's probably hard to find a buyer.
No, that's not it. I talked to a realtor, and they said we could sell it to someone who dreams of rural living. There are potential buyers.
Really, that's interesting. Apparently, there's a demand for peaceful country life or a place to relax from the stress of city living.
But it won't sell. Why isn't it in my name?
Well, obviously. I could imagine George turning red with anger on the other end of the line. What nonsense is he spouting now? I lowered my voice and replied,
What? Did you intentionally put that house in your name?
yes, the remote house I bought for them in the mountains is actually in my name. I didn't understand what was so strange about that. Is there something wrong with that?
Of course there is. That house was given to me. It's supposed to be my house. Why isn't it in my name?
Well, because I bought it.
What?
The house is in the buyer's name. What's so strange about that?
But what?
George's voice was filled with despair. This is really strange. I tilted my head. I bought the house and allowed you and Laura to live there. It's a simple matter, isn't it?
I asked you to buy it for me.
And I did.
No, I mean,
I could almost see George's frustration through the phone. But honestly, I couldn't understand what he was saying. George hadn't negotiated with the realtor or signed any documents when we bought the house. How did he think it was in his name without ever signing any paperwork? It's a puzzled idea.
just change the house to my name immediately. I'll sell that inconvenient place right away.
Why? I couldn't understand what the problem was with living in a house without rent or a mortgage. You want to give money to Jessica, right? A house in the mountains with no utility bills seems perfect to you, isn't it?
That's right, Jessica. She's the problem again.
George suddenly shouted, as if he had just remembered something.
She wants help with the down payment for her new house.
Is that so? What does that have to do with us? David was fed up with his parents' blatant favoritism. Jessica also seemed to take their support for granted and had completely drifted apart from David. So hearing about Jessica's situation didn't matter to us. Why don't you go ahead and help her then?
I was planning to sell that house in the mountains to get the money, but now my plan is ruined. You need to take responsibility and give us the money.
No. I immediately refused and hung up the phone. The phone rang again immediately, and feeling annoyed, I answered it.
If you won't, then put the house in my name.
No. The phone kept ringing after that, with each call being about money or the house title. Each time, I refused, until George finally started begging in a tearful voice.
Please, give us the money.
No. When I replied tearfully like him to George's words, the calls stopped for good. That evening, when David came home from work, he laughed and told me,
My parents called my office and told me to do something about you. Of course, I won't.
However, they continued to send letters and occasionally visit our house, persistently asking about the house, money, or the title. Okay, this time we'll give you a brand new house. They were so persistent that I finally said that, and they seemed to calm down. After a while, David and I went to their house.
This time, it's really a new house, right?
I nodded emphatically. Yes, I built it myself. George looked satisfied and exchanged glances with Laura.
All right. So where is it? We don't want another remote house in the mountains.
Don't worry, You can place it anywhere you like, in the city or anywhere else.
Wait, what? Place it anywhere?
George couldn't understand what I said and asked again, so I repeated it for him. You can place it anywhere you want.
What do you mean, place it?
I placed a package I had secretly brought in front of the puzzled pair.
What is this?
Laura screamed at its size. This is a house that will definitely get you excited, Laura.
What?
I began to unwrap the large package. What appeared was a miniature of a large Western-style mansion.
What is this?
What is this? A dollhouse?
George looked horrified, and Laura's eyes widened. I proudly puffed out my chest. Isn't it amazing? I made this.
What?
I'm really good at crafts. Making dioramas is my hobby.
What?
This is a house I built myself. Please accept it.
What?
It was a dollhouse that any little girl would be thrilled to have. I thought I did a great job, but the two of them were speechless. I'm glad they are so happy they are speechless. I especially hope Laura can enjoy it and feel like a child again. Leaving the silent pair behind, David and I left. They seemed happy. I'm glad. Even though they continued to contact us persistently afterward, we ignored them completely. When they showed up at our house, we pretended not to be home, and eventually they stopped. Much later, I received a call from a relative. Apparently, in their desperation, they had been begging for money from everyone. It turns out they had sold their previous house to help fund Jessica's new home, wanting to impress her. Jessica had invited them to live with her in her new house, but once they sold their house and gave her the money, she cut off contact, leaving their plans in ruins. In short, they were used by Jessica. Laura and George, abandoned by Jessica and estranged from us. They begged for money everywhere, but were repeatedly turned down. In the end, they returned to that remote house in the mountains. At least it would provide shelter from the elements. I'm glad that the house I bought could be useful in some way. Jessica deceiving her own parents is truly devilish. However, it seems karma caught up with her too. Spoiled by Laura and George, Jessica grew into an extremely selfish person. After a huge fight with her husband, they quickly divorced. The reason for the fight was Jessica's infidelity. It turns out the money she got from her parents was actually used for her affairs. Like parent, like child. How David turned out to be such a decent person is a complete mystery. Maybe it was because he wasn't raised properly by Laura and George. With nowhere else to go, Jessica also moved into the remote house with Laura and George. However, there's no way Laura and George could get along with Jessica after spoiling her and then being betrayed by her. There's no way Jessica would start working now, so it seems they are living a poor life, relying solely on Laura and George's savings. As for me, with the end of the dreadful monthly payments and being freed from the control of David's parents, I felt like I could finally breathe freely again. With some financial leeway, I started planning a trip, poring over a stack of travel brochures with David.
Emily, I'm sorry for everything. Thank you.
I was surprised. Seeing David's relieved and clear expression, I nodded enthusiastically. Let's enjoy our retirement together, David. David's gentle smile, the one I love so much, lit up his face.